All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something really different. We're going to look at an analysis that uses ideas from, get this, physics to understand literature and even our own behavior. It's a wild lens to view the world through, so let's just jump right in. Okay, let's kick things off with this one single idea from the source material. They perceive the world as things. Seriously, this sentence is the key. It's going to unlock everything we're about to talk about because it defines a worldview that, according to this analysis, has some pretty profound and chaotic consequences. So who are they? Well, according to the source, our main case study here is the Forsyth clan from those classic Victorian novels. They're presented as the perfect, almost textbook example of this specific worldview, this way of seeing everything and everyone as something to be owned. And we're not just talking about a regular family here. The source frames them as like a whole phenomenon. Their entire existence, their whole world revolves around one single thing: ownership. Their gods, if you want to call them that, money, real estate, and the big one, property itself. That's it. That's the core of who they are. Okay, so how do you even begin to analyze a worldview like that? Well, this source introduces this really interesting framework it calls the law of conscious choice. And it gives a very specific kind of scientific-sounding name to the chaos that this way of thinking just inevitably creates. And that name is entropy. It's represented by the symbol delta S. Now, what's so interesting here is the specific definition they're using. This isn't just, random messiness. It's specifically defined as the chaos, the rejection, and the collapse that is generated when you focus only on property and totally ignore the human or spiritual side of things. It's a direct consequence. So, according to this framework, for the Forsyths, this obsession with property isn't just some quirky personality trait. Nope, it's an active force. It's what's creating the chaos, the delta S, in their own lives. Their focus on things is literally the engine of their own destruction. All right, so let's bring this down from the theoretical to the personal. How does this whole entropy idea play out in a real relationship? The analysis zooms right in on the character of Soames Forsyth, and his marriage becomes this perfect, powerful example of entropy in action. So, check this out. The source makes this bold claim that Soames' so-called love for his wife Irene isn't love at all. It's not a real connection between two living, breathing people. Instead, it's defined as a high-entropy desire, driven completely by a possessive instinct. To him, Irene isn't his partner. She's the most valuable thing he's ever owned, and he feels he has to control her. And what this means is that every single thing he does to try and control her, to make her do what he wants, it's like applying an external force to a living being. And the laws of this framework are pretty clear. An action like that is guaranteed to create a reaction of rejection. In other words, it just creates more chaos, more delta S. Right, and this is the absolute crucial point. Their marriage is basically a textbook example of this law in action. This constant attempt to control another person doesn't create order or stability. It does the complete opposite. It just pumps more and more entropy, more chaos into their relationship until the whole thing is bound to collapse. Okay, so if a life built on ownership and control just leads to chaos, that kind of begs a huge question, right? How do you get out? How do you escape it? Well, the source doesn't just point out the problem. It actually proposes a solution, and of course it gets its own cool symbol. And here it is. It's called the conscious vector, or V+. Now, this isn't some passive thing like just wishing for the best. It's described as a willful, conscious, intentional force that you have to apply to break free from that inherited chaos. The goal is to create a totally new, low-entropy space that the source calls living order. So this whole idea, both the problem, delta S, and the solution, V+, it's all built on this foundation called the law of conscious choice. The source is basically saying this is a fundamental rule for how our lives work. We generate chaos or we generate order based entirely on what we consciously choose to value. And this is where it gets really practical. The source lays out this 3-step operating algorithm called Navigator 5.111 TM. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, identify what's causing all the chaos, the high delta S, in your life. Step 2, you have to consciously define a new direction for yourself. That's your V+. And step 3, you apply that vector, you take action to create that living order. But this leaves us with a huge and kind of provocative question, doesn't it? I mean, it's a powerful idea, but how do you actually apply a vector to a life? What does that even look like in the real world, day to day? Well, turns out the source material has a very specific answer to that exact question. And in our next explainer, we're going to dive into how this conscious vector can actually be used to break free from that system of chaos. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for joining us.